All right, so this is our first class, um, and what we are going to be dealing with is all about how we can build websites or how we can build web application. And there is some key stuff that you need to know first. Please, can you mute your mic? So anytime I want you to speak, you just unmute. So yeah, so thank you. Um, so this is our first class on web development. And when you are talking about web development, as you can see on my screen here, this is the process of you creating, building, and maintaining a site. So when you're talking about web development, this is the process. So there is some process that you're going to, do, or it's just the process of you creating. So some of the process here is you creating or building. So creating and building are technically the same thing. And we have maintaining of the sites that you want to build. Because when you build a site, there's some time that the stuff is going to change. Like Facebook now. The Facebook that we have in 2018 is not the same Facebook that you have now. So the way the Instagram looks 2017, that's not the same way that Instagram looks now. So they are maintaining the site or they are maintaining the application there. So and the process of you doing all these things is what we refer to as web development. All right, as I was saying there, we're going to be talking about web development. And when you're talking about web development, this is the process of you creating, building, or maintaining a site or web application. So when you're talking about a site like Google now, you can go to your browser, type www.google.com, and you can search for different things. That's a site. But apart from sites, we have another thing known as web app or web application. So when you talk about a web application, this is like a subset of website because it's still a site, but this one now is application that runs on the browser. So we have some application that you use on your phone like WhatsApp and a lot of them, but not all the application that runs normally on your phone. Some of them they run on the browser. Before you can use that application, you must go to the browser, type the address of where that application lives, and you will be able to use the application. So those applications that you can use on the browser, they are what we call web applications or web app for short. So you always see me calling it web app, but it's the same thing as web application, and they are just application that runs on the browser. You cannot use them outside of the browser. So that's what we call web app. But when you're talking about the website in general, they are sites or where you can display information or receive data from the user there. And we have a lot of them, so ranging from Twitter or X to Instagram and all of them. So they have their web app, they have their mobile app, or they have their site in general where you can go to know more about what the site or what that particular business is all about. And the process of you doing or building or creating it or maintaining it is what we refer to as web development. So web development is a one or is a process that you are going to use to build or to maintain whatever site or website or the application that you want to run on the browser. Whatever you want to do is always going to be on the browser. You can't use them outside of the browser. But when you're talking about the web development is something that is really broad, like it's really wide. It's just like you saying computer science. Computer science is not just about you coding alone. There's a lot of things that goes under computer science. The same thing here too. When you are talking about web development, there's a lot of things that is under it, or it's subdivided into different components. And one of the components, which is one we are going to be focusing on, is this front-end development. But apart from the front-end development, we have the back-end development. And again, we have the full stack, which join both the front-end and the back end together. So full stack joined both the front end and the back end together. But what is front end, which is the one we are going to be focusing on? So front end is all about what we call user interface, or the visual aspect of whatever the user is going to see on your site. So front end deal with more with relating with you directly. So when you go to a site, you are going to see like the text. So you can see here, there is a text here, there's another text here. But the way this text is being represented here is different from the text that we have here. So how do you process all this thing together, or how do you create all this thing? That's what the front end is all about. So front end is all about the user interface, the area that the user see on the site or the application that they are using on their browser. So whatever stuff the user is seeing on the browser, that's what the front end is all about. It deals with the user interface. So the button, do you want to show button? Do you want to show a box where the user can type, or you want to give them a button that they can click on, or you want to give them something else here? So everything you are seeing on this page is all about front end. Front end deal with the interface that the user interact with on the site or the application that you built on the browser there. So front end is the process of you building the user interface that the user can interact with on the site. And in order for you to be able to do this, we have these three languages that we're going to be dealing with in order for us to do that. So we have HTML. This is our first language that we're going to dive into before we now move into CSS. Then after CSS, we now add the JavaScript, which is the interaction that you are going to be having on the site. This is what we're going to be using later on to control the interaction on the site. HTML will give you the bone, like the body, give you the elements that you are going to use to bring different type of data or different type of user interface out. As you can see here, we have text, we have image, we have icon, we have box where you can type, and also for like that. So how are you going to bring all this in out? That's what the HTML all about. HTML will give you the code or whatever you need to do in order for you to generate a box where the user can type, or to generate image, or to generate icons, or to generate a link. Link is something you can click that takes you from one page to another. What is page? I'm going to explain a lot of them soon. But the front end focus on the interface that goes on the site or the application that are developed for browser. So all the elements that you are seeing there, all the user details that the user can see on the site, that's what the front end is all about. It's the process of you building the interface where the user can interact with the site. So whatever the interface that the user can use to interact with the site or with the application, that's what the front end is all about. For example, now look at this site. There's a button here that I can click on to sign in with Apple or to continue with email. And as you can see, after clicking on that box, can you see it's showing something else? This is what we call interaction here. I click on the button and it do something for me. But how am I going to do this thing? How am I going to talk to all these elements to behave the way I want it to be? That's where these three languages comes in there. So we have HTML, which is what is going to give you the element. So like this box now, where you can type your email, is the HTML that is going to give you. So there is another one for password. As you can see, as I'm typing, the password is not showing. But if you type inside the box for email, as you can see, whatever I'm typing is showing out here. This is HTML. HTML will give you or the language that you're going to use to talk to the browser to display whatever UI that you want to showcase to the user. Is it the image? Is it the button? Is it the box where they can type? Or is it normal text? Or is it logo that you want to display on the site? HTML is what you are going to use to generate each one of them. And everything on this page is what we refer to as element. So this text is element, this text too is element, this button here is or this particular box is element. Everything you are seeing on the page, we normally call them element. So generate text element, generate button element, generate input. So this is what we call input. We're going to talk more about it later on, but this is what we call input, where you can type your text or what you can use to receive information from the user. And we have a lot of them. As you can see on this side, they are just using two. We have the one to collect email, we have the one to collect password, and as you can see, it's not showing whatever I'm typing inside the box. So HTML, you talk to it that this is the type of the input you want, and it's going to display it to the user. But when you are building your site or application and you are using HTML, it doesn't give you any styling at all. So how do you style your button to be blue color? As you can see this side now, their button is blue color. But if you go to another site, you see that the same thing, but the color is that different. So how do you style your element? How do you make your element to look in the way that you want it to be? That's where CSS comes in. So we have HTML to generate the element. So whatever element you want to showcase to the user on the screen, you are going to use HTML. But when you are done generating the element is not going to look nice, and you don't want to show something that is not nice to the user there. So that's where the CSS comes in, and CSS is what you can now use to style the elements that you have on the page. So your button, you don't want it to be white, you want it to be blue, or you want it to be red, or you want it to be green, and so forth like that. That's where CSS comes in there like that. And as you can see this side, can you see the same box is here, but their color is quite different from the former side. How is this thing possible? So elements, you get them from HTML, and CSS is what you now use to style your element the way you want it to be. So you can make sure, like, okay, all this thing, the circle that is there, or this thing is not going to be yellow, is not going to be blue, is going to be the green. And as you can see, Gigi now, their brand is this green, and as you can see across to, they are using that color. But if you go to another site, the same text that Gigi is using, or the same HTML that Gigi is using, is what this site is using too. The difference between them is now the way you apply your style, which is through the CSS language. So we have the HTML language to generate all these elements. We have the CSS language to apply style. But apart from applying style, we have the third one, which is JavaScript. And JavaScript is what you can use to add interaction to your element. So what is interaction? Look at this text here. If I click it from now to tomorrow, nothing will happen on the side. But now clicking on this icon here, can you see that something happened? This is what we call interaction here. We are interacting with this element and it's doing something for us. So how do you talk to this element that when someone click on you, open this thing now and change the icon to X like this? And once this X is clicked, that stuff will be removed and the icon will change back to this hamburger here. So that's where JavaScript comes in. JavaScript is what you are going to use to talk to different elements to behave the way you want them to be on the page. So look at this button here too. If I click on them, you see that this stuff is changing something on the page. Clicking on the first one, look at the way it's arranging the content. Clicking on the second one, look at the way it's arranging the content. So JavaScript is what is going on here. Anytime I click on this button, this is what I want you to do. JavaScript is what you are going to use to talk to different elements to behave the way you want them to be. But how are you going to do all this thing? That's what the training is all about. So how do you use the HTML? How do you use the CSS? How do you use JavaScript? Combining them together to now build a site or to build web application. That's what we are going to be doing with the training there. So we have web development. Under web development, we have the front-end development. So front-end, this way the user interface, everything that you are seeing on the site that your eyes can see on the site, that's what the front-end is all about. They are the one that process everything, how it come about, all the data, whatever stuff you are seeing on the site. Front-end is the process of you managing all those items. But apart from front-end, we have something known as back-end. So what is back-end? This one deals with the area on the site that the user is not really interacting with directly, but it's still part of your site. For example, here now, you go to a site and you said you want to sign in. For example, now let me click on this side. I want to sign in, or I want to sign up or do something with their site. Let me go to Gigi. This one will be more. So let me click on sign in. So on their sign in here, I can use my phone number and email to sign in. So let me just put wrong stuff here, and let me put it as normal email. So at mail.com, and let me put some random password here. And the next thing, I click on this sign in. Can you see what is going on here? This thing is rolling. So this site now, the interface here is all about the front end. But when you want to log into any system, your data needs to be saved somewhere first. When you sign up, anytime you sign up on a site or wherever you sign up, your data is being saved somewhere, so that when you come back later on and you want to continue from when you stop on that application, you can see whatever you filled before or whatever you posted before on that site. So where are they saving this thing? How is it being managed? How did they know that the data they are giving to you, you are the owner or you are not the owner? That's where backend comes in. So backend deal with managing of data that is being used on a dynamic site. Any site that is dynamic, which means the data can change, or you can upload, or you can delete something or remove something from that site. So you need a backend. That's where the data will be saved, so that when you log in on one browser and later on you say you want to continue from another phone, you still see that your data there. So whether you are using iPhone to log in or you are using your system to log in, you always see the same data that you upload to Facebook. So how does Facebook know about you? You need to supply your details, or you need to supply your login details. And at the time of supplying your login details, they need to check whether that stuff is part of the site or not. So as you can see, the stuff is rolling, and that rolling that is going on there, this thing is actually communicating to somewhere to know whether the info that I pass here is right or wrong. If it is wrong, as you can see, it will give me the error. But if it is right, then it will allow me to log in and bring in my details. But how is this thing bringing, where is it getting the details from? That's the back end of your site or the application that is built on top of the browser. So the backend is the process, or the backend development is the process of managing the data that is being used on the site. So how is the data going to be accessed? Who have access to it? Who can get it? And so forth like that. That's the backend area. But in this course, we are not going to be focusing on the backend. We are going to see how to communicate with backend, but we are not going to build any backend, because that's where the full stack comes in. But the one we are focusing on is only the front end. So which means we want to see how to develop the user interface that the user can interact with on a site or on a web application. And later on, when we get to the advanced part, we'll be able to see how to communicate with the backend. But creating the backend, that's not what we are going to be doing. So backend deals with the server logic, as you can see, database, where the data that is being used on the site is saved. So you go to Google and you go and search. You see that this thing will load for some time before it brings the result. So where is it getting the result from? All those data, where are they coming from? It's coming from what is referred to as backend. And backend, front end coming together is what you can now use to build any website that is dynamic or any web application. And don't forget, web application means application that runs on the browser. You cannot use them outside of the browser there. So one of the web application here is Google, this Bing search or Google search, or this site here. Before you can do anything on this site or do something, you need to sign in so that they can know that, oh, whatever you are saving later on, it will save it into your account. Or you want to post on Facebook, the first thing you have to do is to register if you don't have an account. If you have an account, the next thing you do is to log in. And once you log in, you can post any video, any pictures, text, and you see that whatever you've posted since maybe 2010, you're still going to be seeing them on Facebook, because the data are being saved somewhere. And the process of managing those data is what we call backend development. But how do you display the data to the user? That's where the front end comes in, which is what we are going to be working on. So how do we display? As you can see now, this image is by the left, while the other content are by the right. So how do you arrange all these elements like this? That's what we are going to be doing there. So, and the experience you are going to have here, you can use it to build any site. For example, the same thing that Gigi is using here to collect their email, is what this side too is using. The difference between them is the styling, which is the CSS that they are applying there. As you can see, the box here is still the same box here, but if you look at it, the color is different. And again, this one at the top here is just normal CSS and HTML. But the way you are going to arrange your element, it depends on what the UI you are following later on. Don't forget, the front end is all about managing the user interface of a site or web application. And how do you do that? We have these three languages that we are going to be using. The first one is to generate the element, which is the HTML. So HTML is the language that you are going to use to talk to the browser to generate different elements for you. What is element? The text you are seeing on this side now is element. So the image you are seeing on this side is element. The color, the text that you can click to take you from one place to another one is element. All the icons or the images that you are seeing on this side, they are element. Again, here, as you can see, there's a lot of element on this screen. Where I have this toggle element, this is toggle element here. This is another one, and so forth like that. So this is another element, and you are going to see different elements later on. So we explain each one of them. I'll be explaining each one of them when you need them, and how do you bring them in to your website. So we're going to talk about them. But apart from that, we have CSS, which is what you can use to style your element to look like the way you want it to be. So the same element that these people are using here is the same thing what Gigi is using here. The difference between them is just the way they style it. So how do you style them? When we get to the CSS part, you are going to see how to style different elements, because the way you style one element will be different from the way you style another element, and we are going to talk about each one of them. And when you are done with the styling, the last one that is missing is interaction. Look at this text. If I click it from now to tomorrow, anything that does not have interaction, if you interact with them, they will not do anything for you. So which means this text there now have no interaction. But if you click on this one now, if I click on this icon here, you see that something will happen. So this button here has interaction attached to it. So how do you attach interaction to your element? So in order for you to attach interaction to your element, you need the third language, which is going to be JavaScript. So now combining the three of them together, you can work on this interface for this thing here. But what about the data that is displayed here? So what about the data that is displayed here? You are going to see how to communicate with the backend later on to get information, and you process the information by displaying it the way it's going to have meaning to the user. Because the way the data are being saved at the backend is not like this. This is not the way the data are being saved at the backend. So it's now the job of the person that is going to be working on the front end to display the data in a meaningful way to the end user. So our job as a front-end developer, don't let me call front-end developer yet, because I've not explained what is that. So the job of the person that work on the front end there is to receive data or to display data in a meaningful way to the user by using different elements. And how do you generate all these elements? Don't forget. So how do you generate these different elements? You need HTML. So everything you are seeing on this page are being generated through HTML. But apart from that, you need to make them to look the way you want. If you look at this box here, see that its own color, the background there is different. The color here is different, and again, this one did not have color, it's just white. But it's the background here, and the background for this one, they are the same. Why this one is white? And as you can see, anytime I move on top of this one, you see that something is coming at the back of it. This is what we call shadow here. So how do you create all this in? That's where CSS comes in. And if you look at the edge of the box, you see that it is rounded. The edge is rounded. The same thing here too. This one is rounded, but more than the way this one is round. So how do you do all this in? You are going to see how to do them when we get to the CSS part. So CSS is what you are going to use to change the appearance of your element. You generate element through HTML. You use CSS to change the appearance, and you use JavaScript to add interaction to your element. So you talk to your element that once they click on you, display all these items. So look at this one too. If I click on this thing, as you can see, it closes the stuff there. And if I click on it again, it opens it up again, and so forth like that. This is JavaScript here that you can use to add interaction. So you want something to happen anytime someone perform action on that element. That's what I call the interaction there. And how do you do all this thing? You need JavaScript language in order for you to be able to add all this interaction to your element. But first, we need to know how to generate our elements. And after we are done with generating the element, then we talked about the styling of the element. Then apart from the styling, that's where we now move into JavaScript. That's the way it's going to be. We're not going to jam pack everything together. If I start jam packing everything together, it's going to look strange there. So I'm going to break them down according to the language there. We start with the basic one, which is always the HTML, then followed by CSS, and now followed by JavaScript. Then when we are not done with each one of them separately, we now combine them together to work on different UIs later on. And I have a lot of UIs here that we're going to be using for practice, because when you are working on this thing as a beginner, there's no way you'll be creating the design from your head. No, we have people that focus on that, which we call the UI UX designer. So they are the one that bring the UI for you, which is you now as a front-end developer. So people that handle front-end, we call them front-end developer. But when you want to just call all of us about web development in general, you can actually call yourself too as a web developer. But what type of web are you developing? I'm developing the front end. Oh, what type of web I'm developing the back end? So you might need to be specific about this stuff, because developing a site is really broad depending on the level of the application that you want to build. If it's a simple application that doesn't deal with dynamic data, you can just create the front end. You already have the data already, just fix everything and you deploy it. What is the deployment? You want to make it available to everybody on the internet to have access to it. That's what we call the deployment. So the process of you making the site available online, that's what we refer to as deployment. But that one we are going to be taking care of it later on. First, we need to know how to build first, like to create. So don't forget the process. We want to build the user interface. And what do we need to build the user interface? How do you talk to the browser to build something for you? We need three languages: the HTML, the CSS, and the JavaScript. And what are the UI we are going to be building later on? When we are done with them, we are going to be using all these sample, because when you are learning, you need to have sample, and that sample is what you now use. You replicate a sample. That's how you learn. You see a site, oh, I love this site, or this is the way I want my site to look like. What do? You replicate it by using what you've learned there, which is the HTML, the CSS, and the JavaScript that you are going to be seeing later on there. So as you can see, these are different designs that we are going to try later on. But before we get into this part, we need to talk about the HTML and CSS. Some of them, I'm going to introduce them when we get to the CSS part, while some of them, they are going to come in when we have JavaScript, because before you can build some of them to be functional, you need JavaScript. For example, here now, like this one, let me go down. Yeah, so like this interactive, let me find one of the interactive, where is it? Okay, products list with cards. Yeah, so look at this one here. Before you can work on this, you need to have knowledge of HTML, CSS, JavaScript. So look at this design here. But how do you build all these elements? How do you build all this in? You need HTML to generate the element for us. So it's loading. Let me bring it to this screen. It's loading. Come in, let me wait for it. It's loading on the other screen. Yeah, so look at it here. So this is one of the applications we are going to build later on. So what is this application about? It's just like if you know about IT7 or any restaurant, any big restaurant, there they always have this computer in front of them that they punch on to select whatever food that you want to buy. There are people that actually build those stuff. We too, we are going to see how to build it later on, where we are going to build a simple restaurant application. And what is it? It's just a list of their food that they are selling, and it's not less for the people there to just punch on this add to cart to add to the list. So the customer will walk in, and oh, I want to buy this also food. Okay, amala, click on add to cart. Oh, you need Fanta too, add it to the list, and so forth like that. But that application that you are seeing on their system, someone built it. But how do you to build something like that? We are going to start with the language that you need to be able to build something like this. And once you click, as you can see, you can confirm the order. Apart from confirming the order, as you can see, any one of them you pick, it's going to show on the right hand side there with the calculation of the money that you need to pay, and again to the quantity. So how do you join all these things together? We need HTML, the CSS, and JavaScript. HTML is what we're going to use to generate all the elements, the button, the icons. The CSS is what we're going to use to apply the color. As you can see, this one is using orange color. But if you go to another site or another restaurant, they will use their own brand color and so forth like that. But that's not the major thing. How do you apply the color? That's what we'll be talking about. Not the exact, like not a specific color. How do you apply a color? How do you give background? How do you give text to be white color or to be black color? As you can see, when it is this particular color at the back, the color is here for the text is white. But when it is normal button, the color is the black here. And as you can see, the icon too, it have its own color. And if you see, there is a line around the one that is selected here. How do you apply all this in? How do you do all this in? We are going to be talking about them when we are done with our HTML, CSS, and JavaScript there like that. So let's see, what do we need in order for us to be able to build our application? What do we need? Because anytime you want to work on any job, you need to have the necessary tools to build what you want to do. So whatever job you want to carry out, you need the necessary tools that is going to help you out to carry out or to achieve the aim of that job. So here too, you don't just go to the browser and start talking to it anyhow. No, we have some tooling that you need to have on your system that is going to help you out to make your development life cycle to be easier and enjoyable there. So you don't just talk to the browser anyhow. There's some stuff you need to bring together that is going to simplify the process of you building a site. And one of the tooling that we actually need is what we call editor here. So we need an editor. And what is this editor? Or we need this code editor. Sometimes you are going to see that we call it IDE, but the IDE is just a big software that comes with code editor. But for now, I will only focus on code editor. So what is code editor? This is an editor on your system or whatever device you are using that you can use to edit the code that you want to use to generate your site or the application that you want to build. And we have different editor that you can use, but the one that we're going to be focusing on here is this VS Code here, which is Visual Studio Code. This is the number one editor now for developer that you can use to build anything, any software, whether it is on browser or it is for phone or it is for desktop. Majorly, a lot of people use this VS Code to develop the application there. We have a lot of editor that you can use, but the major one here is VS Code. So you need to install this VS Code, which is the editor that we're going to be using to type our code. No, I told you the HTML. We need to type all the code for the HTML that is going to generate the element on the page. For the CSS too, you need to type the code that is going to style your element. And again, the JavaScript too, you need to type all this code out. So where are you going to be typing the code out? And that's where this code editor comes in. You can't be using Microsoft Word, or you can't be using Excel, or you can't be using Notepad. Those ones, they are not going to help you at all. So we have a dedicated editor that is meant for coding, and that's what we call code editor. And there are a lot of them, but this one here, VS Code, is free. You can use it anyhow you want. You don't need to pay, but there are some of them that they are paid. We have paid one, and we have the one that is not paid. So, but this one, since it's not paid, so we are going to go with it. I already have it on my system, so this is it here on my system. But at your own side, you are not going to have it at all. So what you just need to do is to go to Google later on by just typing VS Code. So it's a popular code editor. Once you type it in your search, whether in the Bing or Yahoo search or Google search, any one of them. Once you put it in your search, you are going to see their site at the top. It's always the first one that is going to come outside, VS Code. And you go under their download page and you download according to your operating system, because it can work for Windows, it can work for Linux and Mac and so forth like that, depending on operating system you are using. But I think you are using Windows too. So just go to the download page. Once you click on the download link, it will take you to the page where you are going to download the editor there. And once you get to the page, by default it will detect the operating system you are using. So if you try it from your browser on your system, it will know that okay, you're actually coming from this also. Or you click on the other one if it's not what you're expecting there like that. So let me wait for it. What's going on? So the network, let me pause the video. We have VS Code, which is an editor that you can use to edit your code. I already have it on my system. Look at it. So when you open it for the first time, the way some stuff I display at my own side, that's not the same way it's going to display at your own side. I will ask you to share your screen soon if you're on your system. Are you with the system or you are using phone to listen right now? Are you with your system or you are using phone?
No, I'm with my system. I'm using phone
Okay,
to
yeah.
access the
So
class,
that
but
means,
my system is with me.
yeah. So I think I would prefer you log in with system if there is light there, so that we can set up your editor for you. And because that's the first thing you need to have. You need the tooling needs to be set up first. So all the tooling
Okay.
that you need needs to be set up before you start jumping into coding. But this is VS Code, which is the editor that come with a lot of goodies that you can use to develop your site. So whether you are dealing with mobile app, or you are dealing with web app, or you are dealing with website, or any application that you want to build, you can use VS Code to build it. So it comes with goodies like code highlighting, so which means it, again, it comes with autocomplete. A lot of things that you want to type, you don't need to start cramming them. It's already there in VS Code. You're only just to give it hints. Once you type part of what you want, it will bring out a lot of just suggestion for you that is this thing that you want, and it's going to help you to complete it there like that. But in order for you to enjoy VS Code, in order for you to enjoy VS Code, it's always good that you work with a folder, not working with file. You can work with file too, but when you are working on when you're working on a site, you always think of a site as a project. So like Facebook now is one project on its own. So you are going to have a separate folder that is going to contain all the files that you are going to be using to develop Facebook. The same too when you are building Instagram, for example. So Instagram on its own is another project. So you are going to have a folder that is going to contain all the files that you are going to use to build Instagram. And what are the files? Is your HTML, the CSS, and some other type of resources that you want to use on the site, like videos, the audios, and so forth like that. If it's something that is not dynamic, you have them in a single folder so that you can manage that application easily. And that's how you work in VS Code. When you want to enjoy it, you always have a dedicated folder for your project. And that's what I'm going to do here too. For all my students, I always have a dedicated folder for them, so that anytime we are talking about anything, we know that whatever we are talking about is part of that folder. So if I need to search for anything, I don't need to start going outside or start looking for it on my system. I already know that everything is inside this specific folder. And that's how you do when you're actually working in a real sense for any project. So maybe someone now just come to you, oh, we want you to build a website for us. So you are going to, like, you know, their name or their website, whatever name they want to use, maybe Akeju business, whatever stuff. So you create a folder for that project, and that folder is what you now open in VS Code. And everything you want to do, you'll be creating it under that folder. But that folder now, I normally call it project folder. So when I say project folder, it means the root folder that contain all the other files for a particular project that you are working on. And how do you open, or how do you work with a folder in VS Code? So we have different options. When you open it, you are going to have all this start. You are not going to have the recent because you've not opened it before. So recent will be empty. But because I've been using my own VS Code, so these are some of the projects that I've worked with. As you can see, there's a lot of them here. For you, when you open it for the first time, you are not going to have this recent. What you have is this start section where you are going to have this new file, open folder, clone this about this clone git repository here. You are going to know about all this one later on. But the one we want to use right now is open folder, which is what you always use to open the project folder that you want to work with. Me, the way I used to do my things on my system, I don't arrange things anyhow. As you can see from here, everything that I have, they are always being grouped according to what that thing is all about. So I have a folder for training. For your own, you can put it on desktop or anywhere on your system, but make sure that the things are always organized so that when you are looking for something, you know where to enter. You already know where to, the folder to open to get the resources that you are looking for. If I want to do any training now, I already know that this is the folder I need to open. I don't need to start looking for where my file is. When I'm dealing with screenshot, as you can see, I have folder for screenshot and so forth like that. So under the training too, as you can see, there are different folder there. I have folder for document, the design that we're going to be using later on, and again, I have folder for student. So clicking on this, you see that there's a lot of students I have here. So each student, I always have a file for them, so that anytime I'm working on a particular student, I know which folder to open. So I don't need to start looking around for what's not lost there. But it's not a must that you do it like this. Just create the folder, open a VS Code, and you can continue working with it. But in a real sense, you should always name your project. And I'm going to do that here by creating a new folder there, and I'm going to use your name for it. So which is going to be Abubakar like this. So next time now, anytime I want to work with you, I will just open the folder straightforward, and it will bring out everything that I have under it instantly. Not that I have to start opening them one by one. VS Code is really smart when you open a folder. So when you open a folder, as you can see, it's going to reload. Alright, so to open a folder, so just click on open folder. You go to wherever you want to save the folder, and once you get there, you create it if you don't have it before, but if it's something you have before, just click on it and select folder. So as you can see, VS Code is going to reload, and once you reload, by this side we have something known as our Explorer. So this Explorer is what you can use to manage file in VS Code. And anytime you open any folder in VS Code, in the Explorer, you are going to see the name of the folder that you open. As you can see here, it's showing that I have Abubakar folder open. So and from here, I can create file and folder directly from VS Code. So because VS Code comes with a lot of tools, you don't need to start going to your file explorer to create a file. Whatever you are doing in VS Code is going to happen to the folder that you open there directly. So you don't need to start moving from one application to another one before you can work with your this thing. Whatever you are doing inside VS Code, it will appear in your Explorer there. And how do you create a file? Because this thing is very important in VS Code. You need to know how to create a file and folder in VS Code when you open your folder. So if you want to create a nested file or a nested folder there, we have these two icons that you can use. So the first one is what we use to create file, while the second one is what we use to create folder, because there's sometimes you need a nested folder, which is something I need here, because I'm going to create a folder for HTML like this. So I'm going to have another separate folder for CSS. So when we're dealing with CSS, it's going to be there. And at the same time, I'm going to have another one for JavaScript, which is what I'm calling JS right now. So I'm creating these three folders because I'm running a lot of things on this system. That's why it's taking time, but it's not something that is going to take time at your side because you don't have a lot of tooling on your VS Code like that. But from my own side, I have a lot of things going on, so that's why it's taking time to create the file. But as you can see now, can you see the three of them are like that? So you can create a folder, and at the same time too, the way this my own is showing, that's not the same way to show at your own side. But you too, you can add more functionality to your VS Code later on. But for the starter, this is not the way your icon is going to show. So that's another thing you need to. Again too, all the icons that are here, you are not going to have all of them. Some of them you are going to have, and the way the icon is at my own side, that's not the same way it's going to be at your own side. Why? Because I've really customized my own VS Code or the color like this, which is something you can do at your own end too. But for now, the way it's going to appear at your own side is going to be something like this. So you can change your theme. So you can change the theme, which I can change. As you can see, VS Code can be customized to look the way you want it to be like that. So by default, this is what you are going to have. Let me go down. Should be, where are you? Should be dark. No. Where is it? Yeah, so this is what you are going to have at your own side. But me, I've already downloaded other theme because this is how I want my VS Code to be. But for now, it's still going to be the same functionality. The difference between them is the icon and the way it represents the color. That's really the difference there. But the same functionality. So when you open any folder in VS Code, you are going to have this option to create file, and you're going to have the option to create folder. And when you are creating folder, or when you want to have a nested folder, you need to click on where you want it to appear. For example, here now, if I want to create anything inside the CSS, you need to click on it first. And how do you know that this thing is selected? There is always a line that is going to surround it. If you look at my own now, my own, it have a green line around it, but from your own side, when you are using the default theme, it's going to be blue line, which we are going to practicalize all this thing together soon. But to create a file in a nested folder in VS Code, please, you need to click on where you want it to appear. Because if you don't click where you want it to appear, it's going to add it inside Abubakar directly. So everything that I'm doing here, can you see? It's happening inside the folder. So wherever you put your folder, or whatever the folder you open in VS Code, whatever you are doing there inside VS Code, it will happen directly where that folder is located. So everything that I did now in VS Code, it's here directly inside the folder. And I can do the same thing directly from here. You are going to see in VS Code too. So, if you want to put anything inside HTML using your normal Explorer, you have to open that folder first by double clicking on it. But there is nothing like that in VS Code. So the way you see file is just by click like this to toggle and open. As you can see, when the arrow is facing down, it means it is open. When the arrow is facing right, it means it is closed. So, and how do you now put something inside it? To put anything inside a particular folder, you have to click on it. The line must be there first. And when the line is here, then you can now create the file that you want to work it. And what is file? File always have this pattern where you are going to have the file name. So you are going to have the file name, then followed by the extension of the file. Because all the file we are going to be working on, they actually have extension attached to them. So this is the pattern that you are going to use. All the file, any file that you are working with, it's always this pattern. Whether it is the video, audio, and so forth like that. Every file, everything always have extension. So, and the name here is coming from you. So you can call it, you can name it anything you want. But this extension is very important. The three languages that we're going to be working with, each one of them come with their own extension. And you need to use them correctly in order for VS Code to give you a suggestion for that particular language. So when we want to create HTML file now, so when we want to create HTML file, you can name it anything you want. The file name can be anything. For example, here, I'll call it index. But for the extension, it's always HTML here. So when you are creating HTML file, you can name it anything. So whatever that comes before the dot, you can call it anything you want. But after the dot, it must always be HTML. So this is how to create HTML file. So when you want to create HTML file, you name it whatever you want, but it must end with .html. When you want to create CSS file, so there too, this one too, you can name it anything you want, but it will end with .css. So this is how to create CSS file. We are not going to be working with CSS file right now. We'll be working with it later on. But this is how to create CSS file. And for JavaScript too, it follows the same pattern. This one you can call it anything you want, but after the dot, it will always end with .js. So these are the three files that we're going to be working for now, and we're going to be working with for now. But later on, when we want to start dealing with advanced stuff, we are going to be getting into something known as framework. But for now, I won't be talking about framework because we need to start from the basic stuff before we now dive into framework later on. And some extension too will come in later on are there. But these are the three extensions that we are going to be working with for now. So most especially for now, we're going to be working with HTML. So you can name it anything you want. For example, here we are going to have a sign up and a .html. So apart from sign up on our site, we want to have login.html. So these are what we call web page. So when you are talking about website, it's like a book. Website is a book, but inside the book you have different pages. So on the site too, website is a book, while the pages are different HTML file that you are creating them. So index.html is one page inside your website. Login.html is another page inside your website. Signup.html is another web page inside your HTML. And this is what we call web page here. So going back to this page, as you can see, VS Code, this is their site. So when you click on their normal logo here, it's going to take you to a page that explains what VS Code is all about. But apart from that, if you look at the URL at the top, you see that they have other pages that you can visit. They have the doc page, they have the update page, and a lot of them like that, depending on the site that you visit. Let me go to another site. This one is taking time to load. Yeah, so let me just close this one. So on Gigi, I can go to Gigi website. Look at what it's showing here. This is one page on its own. But from this page too, I can go to another page by just clicking on any of these items. So if I click on card now, on this cards, can you see? It will go to another place entirely. So how do you do something like this? That's what we refer to as pages. So on the page, on the site, we have this index, which is like home page. So this index is what we normally refer to as home page. So when you go to a site, the first thing that you see, when you don't mention the page that you want to go to, that's what we call index. So anytime you go to, maybe just say www.google.com, you do not mention whether you want to go to their Gmail or you want to go to calendar or anything. It will show you the search. So that means that's their index page or that's their home page. The same thing too, when you go online and you just type www whatever stuff and you just put it gg.ng, you did not mention the page you want to go to, you see that it will show you their home page there, which is what we call the index page. So but apart from index page on the site, you can actually move from one page to another page there like that. So how do you represent all these pages? That's where your HTML page comes in. So each pages that you want to work on, you are going to create them in the file like this. So index page, this is our home page. We have the login page, we have the sign up page. But how do you connect them together? You're going to see later on when we start working on the HTML code. But today is just for introduction parts there. We're not going to do any coding today. The coding is starting in the next class. Because first you need to do setup first before you start diving into the coding there. So you open your folder, the project that you want to work with. As you can see, this is Abubakar project here, or the folder, and everything that I put under it, VS Code knows about them. If I close this folder and open it later on, you see that it will bring everything back for me there. For example, here to close, just by going to the file, close folder. So it will close this project, and from there I can open another one. And if I open another one here, for example, like this student now, if I click on his name, you see that this one now has a lot of files. So this one, can you see? This one has a lot of files. When we get to the advanced parts, that's where you know what is going on here. You too, can you see that the HTML is still there, but there's some other type of file that goes along with it. You can see that the CSS is there too. This one is not having .jsx, but what the JSX, when we get to the advanced parts, that's where all this one will comes in later on. But right now, we are dealing with basic stuff, so we are not going to have much than our normal HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. But once we get to the advanced part, you two are going to see what this JSX is all about and so forth like that. So let me close the folder and go back to my Abubakar. And if I open Abubakar again now, you see that the way I open the file down, that's the same way it's going to open everything back. So as you can see, everything that I open down, VS Code will bring them back. The setting that you have, it will put them back. And that's the reason why you should always work with folder in VS Code, because it will save everything together under that folder. The setting, that some setting is doing behind the scene that we don't care about. But anytime you close a folder and you reopen it again, the way you open it when you close it, or the way you left it before you close it, that's the same way it's going to bring everything back for you, and you can continue working on the project there like that. So HTML file always end with .html, and that's what we're going to be using to create different pages on our site. Don't forget, a website is like a book, but inside a single book, you can have different pages. So when you want to build a site for a brand where maybe they are selling products, you are going to have a page where you list what they are selling, which is like a product page. Again, you are going to have something like the home page where you briefly explain what the site is all about, or where you briefly explain what the product that the company is selling. And again, you are going to have something like maybe like the pricing page where you list the pricing of all the products that you are selling. Like this site now, as you can see, this is a site, but under this site they have different pages. One of the pages here is sign in. You can sign into the site. So if you click on the sign in, they don't even make it a page, they make it to be a modal. But let me click on the pricing. So clicking on the pricing, this thing is going to load, and once it's done loading, you see that everything that is showing right now is going to be removed, and it will display another thing for us entirely. But depending on the network, I don't know why the network is slow today like this, that all these sites are not changing fast. But normally, when you go to a site and you are visiting different pages, you are going to see different content coming out on that page. Yeah, it's loading. So let me wait for it. So as you can see now, it's displaying another thing entirely, and this is what we call page. So we are currently on their pricing page or their whatever stuff that. So how do you create page using your HTML? What you do is create a file, but that file will end with .html, and each HTML file are referred to as page. So each HTML file are referred to as page, and inside your page, what are you going to be doing? You are going to put all the content that you want to display to the user for that particular page. Look at this one now. On this page now, these are the stuff that they are displaying. No, this thing is still loading. So whatever you want to display to the user there, whatever you want to showcase to the user, or whatever element you want to display to the user, they are going to be inside the page. And what are you going to be typing later on? That's what we start talking about as from next class. So when you are creating a page, these are the steps you need to follow to start generating all the necessary elements that you want to showcase to the user on the screen there. So that's what we'll be doing in next class. Today is just for introduction. So the first day, I always use this as introduction and setup. Then the next class will now start with our proper HTML, where we start talking about how to structure our page and what are the ways of generating elements. So when you want to generate a text, what do you need to type so that you have this kind of a text, or you have this type of text? As you can see, the text here is on the same text here. So this one here too is on the same thing here, but this one is bold, why this one is not. So if you check the text, they are not the same thing. So this one is bold, why this one is not. So it's the same thing here too. This one is bold here, but this one is not. So how do we generate different type of text? We are going to see how to do that in the next class, and how to generate different with how to put all this content on the browser. So like you generate the code and you'll be seeing the results on the browser. So we're going to start with all this one in the next class there. So I want you to share your screen so that I can see the VS Code that you have over there like that. So I will stop recording at this side because this thing is not going. Oh no, let me move the screen to that part so that I can show what is going on. All right, so can you share your screen? So you need to log in through the system, and you share. You know how to share screen now, right? Hello?
I will need to log in through my
Yes.
system. I'm receiving this. Yes. Or should I just Yeah, let me log in my email first, and then
Yes, you have to log in because
I'll
it's
connect.
Gmail, so you need to know.
I will log in my email now.
Once you log in into your email and you go to meet.google.com, it will
So,
show this meeting there. So it's part of your calendar already. I need to even update the calendar because our next class is not going.
okay,
So if you check the description on the calendar, they have put all the details. So the next class is let me update the calendar. But let me stop the recording
okay,
because the other one is not required.